Welcome to Tiger Chainsaw Interviews. These exclusive interviews will give you a behind-the-scenes retrospective mixed in with some amazing secrets of your favorite games and franchises by the developers and creators of them. Now, if I have filmed the interview, you'll be able to watch it. Otherwise, it's a phone interview, so just sit back and relax. Now, I have done some incredible exclusive interviews with some amazing gaming legends in this community. So hit that sub button to make sure you don't miss any of those interviews. Alright, let's get to our interview of the day. Today, my guest is a man with a wealth of credits on some huge projects, including Blackthorne, Warcraft, World of Warcraft, Starcraft, Diablo, and Overwatch. He's an author, creative writer, and has had many different roles throughout his video game career of 23 years at Blizzard Entertainment. I'm joined by Micky Neilson. First off, Micky, thanks so much for taking time today to talk about your career and dive into Blackthorne on the Super Nintendo. I know it had a pivotal role in your career, and it's an excellent game, so I'm excited to discuss it with you.
Oh yeah, no, it's a blast from the past. It's been quite a while since I've thought about it in any great detail, but I am working on a book that was just announced not too long ago for Blizzard called Forging Worlds, which is a retrospective kind of the company's 30 years old now, so...
Oh, well, perfect. This interview will be a little pre-homework for the book and hopefully stir some memories for you.
It's interesting. It just kind of coincided. Yeah, we're not talking a lot about Blackthorne in the book, but it's just funny that you contacted me right around the same time. I'm talking to a bunch of the old timers about, we're talking about all kinds of stuff from the early days. So it's just kind of funny that it lined up that way.
Your career path is aligned with a lot of writing, especially fiction writing. What got you into that, and why did you end up choosing that road?
Well, let's see. So I had been interested in storytelling from the time I was a kid. I'm a visual storyteller, so my head is always in the clouds. I'm always thinking about different worlds and fantastical settings and things like that. So from an imagination standpoint, what I didn't understand very well was the mechanics of writing, and that was something that I needed to learn as a child. I wasn't really in a situation to get a great education, so a lot of it was self-taught. When I knew I wanted to be a writer, and I had a book, and when I was a kid, I took the book to my dad, and I found in the very beginning of the book, it had the publisher's name, which I actually thought was the writer. And I said, who is this? And he said, oh, that's Whitman. And I said, that's what I want to be. I want to be Whitman. But what I meant was I want to be the writer. And I had an opportunity, my buddy, Samwise, who's the art director at Blizzard, he was one of the first people there at the company when it wasn't even Blizzard. It was Silicon and Synapse. And it was just these college guys who put together this company to make some games and had a lot of dreams and ambitions, but it was tiny. It was, everybody could fit inside of one room. And Sam was doing art, and he called me, and I was in the military and had been in a truck accident, and he said, would you want to do art? Because I'm an artist as well. So that's really where it started. And I said, oh, okay, art for video games, that sounds great. So I went and I learned, I got out of the military, and I went there, and I actually just practiced at night on his computer, because you're doing 2D artwork on a computer back then. There's no 3D, there's no Wacom tablet or anything like that, so you're using the mouse and these gigantic pixels to try and create art. And if you look at the art, in Blackthorne. That's a lot of what it is. It's this very pixelated kind of art, but there's a technique to that. You have to learn anti-aliasing and all of these things that are specific to that craft. And so I spent time doing that, and then I took the test, and I got hired on.
I had no idea on your background in getting into Blizzard, working in the military, getting into that truck accident. That's all very interesting to learn about, and to learn how you were an artist too. I just want to clarify something. Did you start at Blizzard in 1993?
Yeah, I think it was October 93.
Had they changed the name yet?
No, when I started, so around the time that I was training, I believe it was still Silicon Synapse, and I think during the time I was training, there was this weird little period where it actually went from Silicon Synapse for, I think, a month or something, and you might have to double check this. It was Ogre Studios. And this is right around the time that a couple named Jan and Bob Davidson were looking at buying the company. And at that time, the founders, Mike Morheim, Alan Edham, Frank Pierce, they were, financially the company was in a difficult position. It was, if the Davidsons didn't acquire the company, we weren't sure what the future was going to be. And they were paying paychecks with their credit cards at that point. So, we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know how it was going to go. But the Davidsons acquired the company. And, when you're a small company like that, and especially now, I didn't know much of anything back then. I was just a kid. But especially now, when a company is acquired like that, that can be scary too, because you don't know what's going to happen to the company. And around that same time, we started working on Warcraft and what that was going to be, and kind of brainstorming the very early stages of that RTS, the real-time strategy game. So it was a weird time, but the Davidsons allowed the company to remain autonomous and really just kind of let us do our thing. And they were, their thing was educational software, so they weren't even really into video games per se. But they knew that there was some kind of magic that they felt was going on with that little company, and they invested, wholeheartedly into it, and obviously it worked out well.
I think it's safe to say that was a good investment for them. So the actual game of Blackthorne, how did the concept come to be? Did you come up with the story first and then present it to the team, or was it presented to you and you started to write the story? How did it all come together?
Yeah, so the story was pretty much done as far as the concept, the setting. I mean, there was gameplay already when I started at Blizzard. So some of the first things that I was doing, during lunch, I would go and play test and just look for bugs in the game and play through the latest levels. So when I came on, I believe the story had come from Chris Miller, and again, you might have to double check that. And I think it might have been a very collaborative thing. I don't remember them telling me exactly how the story came about, but with, Sarlacc and Tool and all those things, I think that was just kind of group thinking for the most part. So where I came into it was, I was doing art. I was actually working on Justice League Task Force. I was doing animations for that, and I wanted to get into story. And something that's, I think, important for people to understand that maybe not a lot of people know unless they were involved in video games in that time period, is that with a small company like that, and especially back then, everybody did a little bit of everything. So, the artists would learn whatever they needed to learn to help get the game published and finished. And so one of the things that I felt was a strength but also something that I was interested in was storytelling and writing. So I had the opportunity, because everybody does everything, to jump in and do the NPC dialogue so every time you pass one of those captives that's, hanging by chains from the wall, and they say something to you and you have a little interaction with them, that was what I was writing. And so it was a small contribution, but it was the first time that I wrote anything for a video game. So, it's in that sense, Blackthorne has a really special place in my heart as being the beginning, because I did, after about 10 years of doing art for Blizzard and moving into 3D, I had the opportunity to transition over to a department called Creative Development. And that was when I moved into storytelling full-time, and I began writing. I had already written a novella at that point, and I think a couple of short stories, but I moved into it full-time, and that's where my writing career really took off.
What a cool journey you had, going from animation to story development, and it just goes to show how having that attitude to take on any new roles really helps out at a studio. Now, I wanted to ask about your desk space and workspace in 1993. Can you describe the atmosphere back then and transport us back to that era at work?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people shared offices. I think only the founders at that point might have had their own, and I think, for instance, Mike Morheim was sharing an office, if I remember right. And you basically had this big open area. You had a bullpen, and you had offices lining the periphery of that space. So, you'd throw a bunch of artists in together, and we'd listen to Jerky Boys was like, everybody was, I don't know if you're familiar, but if not, look up Jerky Boys, and everybody was quoting Jerky Boys, and we all watched Beavis and Butthead, and I mean, we're, like I said, just a bunch of kids. So at lunchtime, we're either playing Samurai Showdown, we're running and grabbing, Taco Bell, and a bunch of the, especially the programmers, but a lot of the artists too played Magic the Gathering, so that was kind of the big thing, is that open bullpen area. Most of the time at lunch, when you went into that bullpen, there were people sitting around the walls, and they all had their Magic cards, and they're all playing Magic the Gathering. And obviously playing games. Everybody was playing, I think, like Doom right around that time, I think, was the biggest one. And so we were running around blasting the crap out of each other in Doom. And it was just a lot of fun. What more could, I was 21, I think. What more can you ask for? As a kid at that age, and I was into comic books and a bunch of, we were all into the same stuff, really. Everybody's really geeky and into fantasy and sci-fi and movies and comic books, and so everybody speaks the same language. And when you're in a company, when you're working on a team, there's a shorthand that you develop when you speak geek, and as long as everybody was speaking geek, everybody just understood exactly where the other person was coming from. It's like, this, I'm working on this background, and I think maybe it should be like Geiger stuff from Alien. Like, okay, I understand 100% what you're saying. So it was fun. It was such a blast.
Man, what a blast that must have been. Sounds like such an incredible time to me, and that's something that I really wish I could have been a part of. Something cool like that at a studio. So Micky, you started out as an artist and transitioned into a writer, which you've had a phenomenal career in. But what's your creative process for writing? How does the story come to you, and does it happen the same way every time?
Stories can come from anywhere. Sometimes it's just a thought that pops into my head. Sometimes it can be inspired by something that I'm watching or a book that I'm writing. And of course, when we're talking about licensed things or projects like the thing I'm doing with Blizzard now, people come to you and they say, we have this project. Would you like to do it? For my own stuff, and I actually work with Sammy, and the two of us, and another writer named Todd Borger, we've put together this entire pitch deck at this point. So we have like 30 different story ideas. And we talk to publishers, and we talk to not just, novel publishers, but we talk to graphic novel and comic book publishers as well with all these ideas, and just kind of push our own ideas. Because that was one of the big things with Blizzard, was I loved being able to work on those worlds, but they were never my worlds. I didn't really have ownership. I was just kind of, taking that space to a certain extent, which was fine, and it was great, and I understood those worlds inside and out, and so I was in a good position to be able to bring a little bit of my own voice to that. But it really is its own world, and you're just kind of inhabiting it for a while. So, I enjoy being able to create my own ideas, and I do like to collaborate. So, I'll get together, like I said, with Sammy or Todd or whatever, and we'll just talk. And the best thing that I've found, I think, when I do my best work, is when I'm bouncing ideas off of somebody else. And that's true for video game story development as well. If you get creative people together, if you get like-minded people together, who are, fairly reasonable to work with, you can get a lot done. You can make a lot of progress, and good ideas can come from anywhere. And so quite often, because Sam is very, obviously creative and imaginative as well. He's done some of his own books. And so the two of us together, we can get on the phone for an hour and come up with a completely new intellectual property, and something that, that we feel is really compelling. So from then, it's just, applying things that I've learned over the years. But the process of doing it really, my brain is just, I get lost when I'm driving because my brain is off in La La Land, and, I'm thinking about story stuff. And so I can barely get back to the same place twice once I've been there. It's kind of a miracle that I ever reach my destination when I'm driving. But that's because, and my memory sucks. So I don't know if, there's a compartment of my brain that's full of the imagination and everything else, and the memory got kind of kicked out or what. But that's just how my brain works.
When Blackthorne was finished and released, what was the reception around the office? Was the team excited about it? Did the game meet expectations?
I think it did, and I don't remember the specifics a lot. There's one thing that I think is worth mentioning that I think people will find interesting is it was the first time we worked with an artist who we really looked up to, and that was Jim Lee, who's a legendary comic book artist, and I don't know who arranged it, but we got him to do the cover and the promotional artwork. So when you see those posters and things like that, that's Jim Lee artwork. So that was a really big deal for us, that alone. And then later on, the company had the opportunity to work with some of the biggest names in the industry, which is just fantastic. But that was the beginning. That was really the first time we had a big name like that attached to something that we were doing. But I remember that it was successful successful, and I think, everybody was happy with it. And I think around that time, though, because of everything else that was going on in the company, and the fact that everybody right after that, or I think we might have even been working on it during, to a certain extent, Warcraft was the focus. And it's like, okay, now we've been doing licensed material. We've been working on ports and things like that. We've been working on games for other companies. So Warcraft was our baby, and that was an opportunity for Blizzard to really come into its own and to shine.
So I know you already answered this, as you were obviously one of the game testers for Blackthorne, but did you actually beat the game from start to finish?
Yeah, I played it all the way to the end, and that, we didn't have a QA. Nowadays, or even with a smaller company, you probably don't have QA necessarily even nowadays. So, for us back then, it was like everybody on the team, not only did you do multiple things, but no matter what, everybody played the games. And I think everybody at that time, because we were all into it, we were doing stuff that we enjoyed, and so it's not like a task, like, oh God, I gotta play the game again. These are fun games, and so it's like, yeah, I totally want to finish it, and even when it's rough, you still have fun, and then you give feedback, and they make changes to make it more fun, or to fix bugs, or do whatever. But same thing like when we were doing Starcraft. I mean, every single person in the company at one point, they had a bug list. And, you had a whiteboard, and you had all these bugs, 3, 4, 5, 7, whatever. And everybody played the game until they fixed those bugs. And sometimes they'd fix a bug and introduce a new bug, and you're like, oh God, okay. But, it was still fun. And everybody, when you're that age, very few, I think there might have been a couple of people who were married, but for the most part, what are you doing with your free time? I'm gonna go, we had the party animals, and I did a little bit of that, so yeah, you might go to the bar. We all sang karaoke, so that was a lot of fun. We'd go and do that, but other than that, and that's the other thing too, is like, even when we weren't at work, most of the time, we were all hanging out together, so we spend all day at work together, and then we go and we sing karaoke until 2 in the morning, and then, come back the next day and at it again. And so it really was, in a sense, a kind of family atmosphere. And everybody wanted everything that we were doing to be the best and to succeed. And so everybody was 100% on board to play the game all the way through to the end and provide, feedback.
It really sounds like you were part of a brotherhood at that studio. But I have to ask, what was your go-to karaoke song?
Bed of Roses was like, and I don't remember if it was out yet at that time. If it wasn't out yet, it became my go-to song. And Kenny Rogers' Lady. And so I had a few that, but some of those guys, we had a guy named Roman Kenny, he won awards. Like, he would actually, he would travel to karaoke competitions. And he's busting out, he's busting out Erasure, and I mean, he's just going nuts. He's got like a high voice and everything else, and just killing it. So, he was the guy you didn't want to, go after. And Metzen, of course, Metzen had been, I think, in a band, had his own band or something like that, and so he's getting up there, doing all the heavy metal stuff and everything. Sammy was big on Dio, and I'm spacing on the name right now, but he was always into the heavy metal and the hard rock and all that.
Yeah.
So you'd get, you'd go to karaoke and you'd get a little bit of everything. Me singing Lady, and then Sammy up there doing some speed metal or something.
Man, you guys were just a room full of talent. It sounds like no matter what you had your hands on, it was going to be good. You went on to have an incredible career in the video game industry, creating plots and authoring books. But do you still play video games? And if so, what are some of your favorite games that you find yourself returning to these days?
Games, I loved games for a long time, and I still love the idea of games. I don't play them as much because of the time factor. I write anywhere from 10 to 12 hours a day, and sometimes more than that. And it's nice being able to work from home, and I was already working from home before it became the thing to do. You know, if I'm working on a book for a game, I'll make sure to put in the time. It's like research. It's like when you're doing, you know, I did the Call of Duty World War II field manual. And so I want to make sure I understand the game, and I had to do a ton of research into World War II, which I was already interested in anyway. So it depends on whatever project I'm working on. But as far as just hanging out and playing games, I don't have time between family and the writing that I do. And I don't, you know, when you're working freelance, for the most part, unless you're incredibly lucky, there are no weekends. There aren't really anything, you know, nothing such as like a day off. You just, you know, you put in the time and you do the work, and you've got deadlines you have to hit. So that's the main thing. So if it's a video game project, then yeah, I'll dive into the game and make sure I do my research to know what I need to know to do the job.
I know you're a busy guy today, so gaming takes a back seat, but back in the day, when you had more time, what was your favorite game?
I was big on Doom. There was a game called Descent, and I don't know how many people remember that game, but you were basically piloting this craft, and you could go in any direction that you wanted to, and it was a shooter, and so you were zipping through tunnels and stuff like that, and blasting your enemies. But, you know, you could get, I forget how many players, if it was 4 players or what, but you could get everybody in there and just shoot the crap out of each other. That was a lot of fun. Adventure games were fun, too. I enjoyed the personality and the animation and things like that. But real-time strategy games, you know, I stuck with a lot of the Blizzard games, even when I was off on my own, and I had a period of time where I was just a Hearthstone fiend, where I had to stop myself, because, you know, I'd go and play Hearthstone, and next thing I know, it's like 4 a.m. I'm like, crap, I gotta get up in a few hours, so I had to stop doing Hearthstone because of that, but yeah, those were some of my favorites.
Mickey, this is my favorite question to ask. I ask it in all of my interviews. But Mickey, what is that one memory you will never forget when you were working on Blackthorne? It could be something funny, something serious, an emotion. What's that one memory that you will always associate with Blackthorne?
I don't know why this stuck in my mind. So I was going back, I was looking at a YouTube playthrough because like I said, my memory totally sucked. And I was looking at some of the dialogue, and there was one piece of dialogue that stuck with me. It was, "Curse this terrible life." And I don't even know, I think we might have had some bits of dialogue that would show up less often. And I don't remember if it was one of those or not. I'm not sure if it's one of the common ones or even if it got cut. For some reason, that line stuck with me. And I think it's just, again, it's like my brain, when I'm looking back at kind of how my career started, somehow it starts with the line, "Curse this terrible life."
Well, despite a rough start, Mickey, you've certainly become an icon in the video game scene. You worked for Blizzard for 23 years, you went independent a few years back, and I know that you're still cranking out tons of projects. So, what can we look forward to as far as creative works go from you?
So I just finished a sci-fi trilogy. It's called the Skip Tracer Trilogy, so I'd love for people to check that out. I did a book with Sammy called Strange Highways, which was a ton of fun. And there is more potentially on the horizon with that. We wanted to establish an IP with that and really kind of make a franchise out of it. And so there's more to be on the lookout for with Strange Highways. I mentioned the Blizzard book. So the book is called Forging Worlds, and it's some of the most iconic art. And like I've been sitting here telling stories, it's a lot of stories from 30 years of Blizzard history, which is just incredible to even try to wrap your mind around. And there's another project from Chris Metzen left the company. He started his own gaming company, but it's tabletop gaming. And so, his big thing is D&D and Warhammer and those kinds of things. So he asked me if I would write a novelization, which is really interesting and crazy because what I'm novelizing is the tabletop adventure that he created for his buddies back, like when he first started at Blizzard and he was 20-something and him and his buddies were sitting there rolling the dice. So I'm novelizing that. So I talked to all his buddies about their characters and stuff and just trying to make sure I'm getting the character stuff right. So that's his gaming world is called Ouroboros. And there is a Kickstarter. I believe it goes live in the next day or so. Might have to double check on that one. But that one, it's been announced, and the Kickstarter is going live soon. And depending on what payments you do for the Kickstarter, the novel is part of the bundle that you would get. Oh, well, and I should mention, I forgot to mention, because I have so much going on and my brain is oatmeal. I'm working with Frost Giant, and Frost Giant is putting together a new real-time strategy game. And so I'm doing a lot of consultation with them right now. It's composed of a lot of ex-Blizzard folks who really love real-time strategy games. And so they are focusing on making the next great RTS, and that's something I'm helping out with from a story perspective.
Wow, you were not lying when you said you work 10 to 12 hours a day, Micky. It sounds like we've got a lot of awesome projects heading our way from you. But Micky, I really wanted to thank you for taking time out of your day to discuss your career with me along with Blackthorne. It's been my pleasure, and I really appreciate you sharing your memories with us. And of course, thank you, the listener, for tuning in. If you love exclusive interviews with game creators and game developers, make sure you hit that sub button to watch and listen to plenty of more interviews that I have coming up. Thanks for listening.